We are right at 6:30, and so I'll call our workshop to order. Karen, can you, rather than doing full roll tonight, can you just note roll for the record? Sure. And with that, I'd like to welcome everybody to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. If somebody could display the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Council, we are in workshop format this evening, so anybody who is watching online or watching a replay of this meeting, just note that this is a working session of Council. We will be of more informal of nature and will not be taking any official action this evening. Any items that are discussed tonight that require official action will be on a formal City Council meeting agenda on an upcoming meeting. So with that, we've got a number of items for Council to consider this evening, the first of which being the water tower painting. And I believe, Dan, or Dave, you are walking us through options and discussion tonight.
Yep. Thank you, Council. Just here tonight, as part of the water supply plan, there's a lot of big projects, including water plant rehabs and new water tower or new water plants, but there's also preventative maintenance in that supply plan, and one of these is the painting of the water towers. Painting of the water towers, they'll look nice and shiny new, but the main purpose of them is to protect the steel towers themselves so they don't rust. And it's recommended it's a kind of a wide range, 10 to 20 years when they need to be painted. We're at about year 15 now, so initial looks at the tower, the inspector thinks we can get away with an overcoat versus a complete sandblast and repaint, which is significant savings. And this overpaint will get you another 10 plus years. So it's about half the cost to overcoat versus a full repaint. So with that said, and with the actual budget for a full repaint, it was kind of discussed with engineering, and I think we'd like to go ahead and do this overcoat before it gets past that point where we're not doing that anymore. But with that being said, an overcoat, we're allowed to change the logos on it. So that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like to go, when we put this out to bid in October, to include the logo in it, not to be determined later, so I'd like to put that in the bid package. Most cities do go with, the logo of the city on their tower, but I can't assume, so I want to make sure I get feedback from Council and what we can do. So I took some pictures of the current towers, and that the package, you can see them. It's just blame that like a reddish forest lake at the north tower on both sides are identical. And then the south tower, the one side facing the football field says FL Rangers, and then the back side facing either the southwest says Forest Lake, but it's in the Ranger colors, the more maroon Forest Lake. So I'm just here tonight for the discussion. We have basically four options. One, that we just keep the exact logos that are on there right now. The other one is to repaint both the towers with the new logo. All four sides would have the new logo. Third option would be the north tower having the logo on both sides. The south tower with the Forest Lake logo on facing the southwest, and then an updated Forest Lake Ranger logo. And then the fourth option would be other. So if we'd like to go a different route or put something else on there. So, and the two Forest Lake Ranger logos that you see in your packet are from the school district. I reached out to them and asked if they had an updated logo if we were to go that route. And those are the two options that they gave. So I guess I'm just looking for direction, discussion, and where we'd like to go next.
Thank you, Dave. And I just want to jump in. I skipped over open forum and just a quick check-in. Karen, did we have anybody either present for open forum or any written submissions?
I did not receive anything for open forum this week, and I don't have anybody waiting.
Okay.
So
okay.
We're good.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, back to the water tower. Thank you, Dave. Council, questions and feedback for Dave this evening? Dave, I just want to circle back on cost. So the paint and to redo the logos is part of what is included in and kind of planned for in budget, or is this incremental cost above what's currently in the CIP?
What's currently in the CIP is $350,000 per tower. But that includes a complete repainting, which when you see that, that's when they drop the big drop cloths over and they sand down the whole entire tower and repaint the whole entire thing. By with the towers being inspected and through engineering looking at it, they feel that there's the original paint on there isn't past the thickness where we can just basically repaint it, go over the top of what's there, which is a significant savings because you don't have the sanding and you don't have to take down all the cell towers. So just the cell towers is probably a $50,000 to $100,000 venture by the time you take them all down, put up a temporary tower, because they are leasing from us, so we have to provide them either the tower that we're using or move them to a portable tower. So there's a significant cost savings in not having. So on an overcoat, you do not have. You can just paint around them or paint on them. You just can't on a full entire rehab. So with those cost savings and with the recommendation of engineering to be able to do an overcoat, I think you could maybe get 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 more years out of what we have currently and do a full one. But if you could do it for close to half the price and not save the headache of removing everything and still buy yourself another 10 plus years as an overcoat, I think, cost wise and just it's the right decision to make. So we're fortunate that it's still in good shape. I think that's basically what I'm saying, is that the original paint job was done very well and it's held up very well.
And with that option, we still have an ability to change the logo. So there will be, the coverage will be sufficient so that will still be a good outcome to change the logo without doing the full sandblast repaint.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a term that they used, but it's basically whiting it out. So they'd white out a little bit more over top of that, the existing logo. So they'd cover it up so nothing would show through, and then they'd put the new logo over top of it. So yes, it would cover it up. I can't remember the exact terminology used, but basically, yeah, they just maybe an extra couple layers in that one spot.
Thank you.
And most cities do just put their logo on it. I'm just, sometimes you drive through a town and you see something different or on it. I just want to open up that option that is an option, but I'd say 90% of the people just, it's an adopted logo that the city has and that's what they would put on it. But like I said, I just don't want to assume. I want to just make sure we're all on the same page.
Great. Councilmember Bystrom.
Yeah, I guess I love seeing, Forest Lake Rangers over the football field, but I also want to be sensitive to the fact that we have 3 other schools in the community. And so, I guess given that and given the standard practice really is to put a city logo on it, that would be the direction that I would prefer to go. I mean, I don't have, I'm not rigid on this at all, but that's just my initial thought.
To piggyback on that, Dave, would you? So we're talking about painting 2 different towers, right?
Yep.
And one of the options is to do the Ranger logo by the tower that's right by the high school, and then do the Forest Lake logo on the other one.
Correct.
Is that an option?
Yep, the towers are painted on two sides. So if you were to pick the Ranger one, the side facing like I-35 facing southwest would still have the Forest Lake logo on it. Just the one facing the football field would be the only side that had the Rangers on it. And then the North Tower, both sides would be the Forest Lake logo. So out of the 4 logos total, one of them would be the Rangers.
Thank you. Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, Mara, thank you. My gut reaction to the whole thing is to go with option 2. It is, repainting the tower and place a new city logo on both tanks on both sides. So I agree with Councilperson Bystrom on that, and that's just kind of the way I'm leaning, or at least initial reaction to this. So, my 2 cents.
Other thoughts? I personally like having the one that's right by the football field, branded Ranger territory. The side of the football field that's closer out towards the community, having that be Forest Lake. The school district is, yes, we have other options here, but school district is by far the largest footprint. And I know the school has spent a lot on branding and signage, and so I like that partnership. My only recommendation would be to have a conversation with the school district around specific logos and any specific message that they have. But I think it's a nice touch, and especially if it's just on the one side that is right, it's just right next to the football field. So. Any other points of feedback?
Mayor Bain, I don't feel like super strongly one way or another on this. Because I see Councilmember Bystrom's point of we have other schools, but yet I also am like, that side faces specifically the school, and we really want to have a strong partnership with the school. That if we don't do it Ranger, do people infer that as some sort of statement, or, I guess I just, in the grand scheme of all the things we have to decide on, I'm not, this one, I don't know. But then these are the ones that tend to be the issues. So.
And that's part of my concern. It's branded Rangers today, so to not brand it Rangers just feels like a departure that doesn't reflect the strong partnership we have. And so that's part of my hesitation to not continue that tradition.
So the consensus more or less is we want the Forest Lake logo and either yes or no to a Forest Lake Ranger logo. The other is kind of out of that kind of consensus, is that we either want it to be the Forest Lake logo on all 4 sides, or maybe a Ranger one on that one by the South Tower. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
I think Councilmember Valento was going to jump in as well. Oh. Go ahead.
I just kind of wanted to echo what Councilmember Munson was saying, that I don't really have a strong point of view either way. I definitely agree with Councilmember Bystrom about how we have other schools in this area, but since we already have what you said, Mayor Bain, we already have the Ranger logo there. It would just I wouldn't want it to look weird, like that we were taking out that logo and like there was some other message behind that. But then again, either one, I'm for either one.
And to Dave's follow-up question, for the Forest Lake logo, we're talking about the currently adopted Forest Lake logo. Is there consensus on that?
That'd be my vote.
Agree. Okay. Suggested next steps: have a conversation with the school district on desired logo and just see what hear from them. I'd like to hear from them. Again, I know that they've spent a fair amount of effort, and there's been, you know, some planning commission consideration on signage. And that's just, you know, they've tried, you know, that's been active on their agenda. So I guess I'd be open to hearing feedback from them on their preference and then bringing it back, but I'm open to other feedback from council.
Mayor Bain.
Yes, please.
Just an idea, and I being new, I don't know how I guess it would work. But my first thought is, what if we put this out to the public to have some sort of feedback for, like, say, a month? I don't know what the timeline is, but I think hearing from the public would be a good start.
I think who can say no to that, right? I mean, it sounds like yes. Dave, when do you need to have some consensus or action for next steps? What does timing look like?
Yeah, we'd like to go out to bid and have a bid packet together by late September, early April, go out for bid for painting to be done in 22. But we're talking with engineering, that's about the time we want to let it out for bid, because people are starting to get work for the following year, and that's typically when your best prices are if you can do it in that fall. So and that's kind of why I brought this up now, is I'd like to have this all, give us some time to make sure we figured out what we want on there before we go to bid, so we're not pushing ourselves out. I think if it's going to be a decision between a Forest Lake logo and the Ranger logo, if that's kind of the way we're going, and I think that can be put together pretty quick. It's if we go to the other, right? If you pick, you know, why don't we let the elementary schools put together designs and follow, you know, find stuff that way? That's when it can become a 9-month, a year process to do that. And we don't want to get into those weeds, or if we do, we need to know that right now, you know. So, but I think definitely put it out to public to say, do you want it all to say Forest Lake, or do you want the Rangers included? You know, a month for that and figure out our final and then come up with a design. I think we have plenty of time for that.
Just jumping in, my feedback or recommendation is that, given that this is a costly painting effort and not something that we would want to do just as part of any logo change, my recommendation would be that the options on the table be generally adopted existing logos, that we aren't kind of reinventing the wheel or aren't trying to come up with a new branding campaign. Again, the current logos, or kind of anything of the flavor that is in Dave's current deck or options, have been kind of generally accepted and widely used. Kind of given the cost involved and the number, you know, how frequent or infrequent we do this type of a project, I would encourage us to not try to do something that's new and may not be well adopted or well liked, right? Like, you know, there's a fair amount of risk on going a different direction on something that's going to be, we're going to live with it for probably the next, 10 years, Dave?
Yeah, 10 to 15 plus, yeah.
So just my 2 cents, other thoughts? Do some social media feedback. Is there some general desire? I do think that's a good idea of gathering some feedback and thoughts. Dan and Jackie, is that something that you could put a post out or kind of gather some just informal feedback?
Yep, that's not a problem at all.
Council, before we head down that path, any hesitation on going that route?
No.
Okay,
right.
I can work with Jackie and then get her some of these pictures and stuff. We'll get some put together and get that going.
Perfect.
Very good. Dave, anything further needed from us at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think I got good direction. So we'll do some social media stuff, and then we'll get back to you in a month or so. Tell you what we figured out.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, our next item this evening is discussion of or consideration of some interim ordinance as part of the emergency powers, and kind of a piggyback onto the conversation we had at our last council meeting of kind of question posed to staff is, are there certain provisions, that administrative procedures that we have used as part of the emergency powers, that we may wish to have some sort of an bridge ordinance that, you know, with the thought that emergency powers may be ending in the near term, and we may want some avenue to extend some of those what currently is granted as under the emergency powers. In particular, the patios have come to mind, but the question was, are there other things we should also be considering? So I'll turn it over. Patrick, are you leading us through this?
Yeah, you hit it right in the head. Basically, what we've done with the emergency powers, is to institute a few restrictions. Most of those the governor has lifted, like the masks and all that. You will return probably soon to in-person meetings. So really, all that's left, and pretty much the major thing we've done with the emergency powers, were allow those restaurants who wanted to have outdoor seating to expand the ability to serve customers. Where that was restricted inside, they could move outside and expand their capacity. We took applications, and I think we have 5 or 6 current restaurants that are allowed to do that. And that is, we anticipated to allow that through September, the end of September, and then have it expire. However, if the emergency order, both on the governor and the local one for the city, goes away, we are then in conflict with our own zoning ordinance and the ability to have outdoor seating the way we've arranged it. So the major ordinance change or whatever interim ordinance that I believe we have to address is the patio seating for restaurants.
Patrick, can you or Dave and Ryan kind of expand a little bit further on what it is that we've allowed them to do that ordinarily would not be allowed?
We've allowed, for the most part, for the restaurants who are involved, and then we had more last year, is to set up in parking lots close to their business. Applebee's comes to mind. The VFW did that last year, and some others. Others have patio seating on lawns or right-of-ways. We don't have too many right-of-ways that they're on sidewalks, but most of them put up some kind of temporary fencing, whether that's been, you've seen some of those garden wrought-iron fences that just stick in the ground, or we have provided barrels with some fencing and roping so that they could do that as well. So they're pretty inconsistent, but they make them up as what they see fit. So we don't, again, downtown, we don't have much on the right of way. So it's pretty much contained to pretty close to their buildings right now.
And so looking from council tonight, are you looking for feedback on extent, timing? What?
I would look for 2 things. A, does the council want us to extend the temporary patio seating through basically the end of September? Because after that time, it's starting to get cold and people aren't as interested. Plus, the indoor dining restrictions probably will be 100% off. And the bigger picture is, should we be looking at something different in the long run to change the ordinance to allow more of these than we have now? I think the zoning ordinance restricts them quite a bit. Should we, in the meantime, not for this year, but for next year, consider some other kind of relief that allows outdoor dining and makes it easier for the businesses to do so?
Have we asked the businesses that are
No, not yet. We have not.
Okay, that are currently utilizing. Okay.
No, and Donovan, if you want to talk about the zoning part, but I think there are some restaurants that it's a natural for, and then there's others that are more difficult, obviously, than others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Donovan, do you have some thoughts on kind of what kind of pain points we might have with current patio restrictions, or do you hear of pain points that should be considered now, or what is that? What is your gut tell you?
Yeah, it's I mean, I think, you know, Pat kind of phrased it well, that for some organization, you know, some businesses, it's really going to be something that I think they want to take advantage of the recent flexibility. Others, it's really not going to occur to them just based on their type of business or just their space. And this spring, I have talked to a couple property owners, a couple restaurant owners who want to expand, and they propose something like, you know, permanent improvements, which to me invokes site plan review, you know, formal planning commission, you know, submittal and review. And, you know, that's something, you know, they weren't really willing to do the full thing. You know, I wasn't sure. It's kind of, you know, so much, things are so much in flux that, you know, that they weren't willing to commit the resources. And it seems to me like there might be a better option to perhaps create a, you know, summer sidewalk dining rules where maybe there's administrative staff review, so that, you know, and I'm thinking basically with some parameters on it, like, you know, cannot increase the seating by more than 1/3, can't encroach upon public right of way, that sort of thing. And so that, you know, and, you know, need a fence permit, you know, that sort of thing. And also any kind of considerations for the liquor license restrictions are followed, and any kind of, you know, Met Council requirements for, you know, that additional sanitary sewer use, you know, also be taken in consideration. But those, I'm thinking of a much more simplified thing, you know, process where we're not doing the full planning commission with surveys and, you know, and obviously that's an option if some restaurants want to do expand more. So I mean, I have some ideas on it, and, you know, I think it would be good to, this is one of those things I think might become more of a permanent thing based on, you know, the last year and a half experience.
Yeah, and I think I have to agree with Donovan that when we talk about expansion for sidewalk dining, that it's not a permanent sidewalk dining. I don't think we want permanent fencing or concrete blocks or anything like that to be outside of the restaurant that becomes cumbersome and problems for us. I think that like Donovan mentioned, the summertime dining that has temporary structures or temporary barriers, that's where you need, that's what I think if we go that way, we should go. And those barriers are enough that, you know, you can't walk out there with a beer in your hand, walk down the street, but still informal enough that you can pick them up and take them out, A, at the end of the season, or B, at the end of each night, if whatever the place wants to do. It's pretty common in some places. That's what I recommend if we were to go forward with something like this.
Mayor Bain, are you looking for input?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say, I love the temporary summer idea. I think it's a good compromise. I'm one of those people in this summer is not very long in Minnesota, that if I can eat outside, I want to eat outside. And I don't know. I just think that's a nice added benefit to the community and makes it, I don't know, more community friendly. So I personally like that. And also being, attending the planning commission meetings, I could imagine that could become a really complicated discussion to make it permanent. But I like the idea of, let's make it easy for them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think at the very least, we need to, you know, first and foremost, kind of extend, you know, what we're allowing them to do through September. I don't know if we need to gather some additional feedback for the long term, you know, maybe understand what that might look like model wise. But I tend to agree with Councilmember Munson. I'm an outside girl. I want to be out as much as I possibly can. Our summers are so short, and I think it's a win-win. It's a win for businesses, you know, provides them some additional seating, you know, potentially increase some business coming off of a pretty horrible year in the short term, and in the long term, I still think it's a win-win for the community and for the local businesses.
Mara,
other thoughts, Councilmember Husnick?
Yeah, I too would like to see that remain in place or even expanded to really help that situation out. And, you know, the summer, I agree with the council members talking about the summers are short. And I think this is a golden opportunity to really make it nice for a lot of restaurants and for the city of Forest Lake, make it a little more welcoming. And you know, I understand you don't want permanent fencing and all that.
Right.
You don't want to do that, but there's certain things that can be done on a temporary basis for the summer. And then let's not go through that planning commission process and all this the permitting and all that. Let's just make it some staff recommendations or whatever it takes and say, here's some guidelines we want you to follow and be careful of the setbacks and the public right of ways and that kind of thing. And we need to keep this going for them. I really do. And I'd like to see it permanent.
I'll just chime in, just say, agree with what's been said. I do think we should do an interim ordinance to at least be able to maintain current state, at least through the end of the season. And so I'd like to see that come back. And then on a more permanent basis, I do really like the idea of some sort of an administrative process to allow for staff to administratively approve whatever we define as that summer patio option that does, you know, kind of cut back on what does it take for a business to be able to go through that process. They don't need to do a full site plan, but also for us to illustrate and to be able to communicate what is important to us and kind of what would fit under a easier kind of a summer administrative process rather than full site plan review. And if we could have that, you know, in place by, you know, in place for patio season next year, I think would be great. So probably, you know, two-prong approach. The short term is the interim to allow for extension through at least September, and then the long term would be this summer administrative patio process.
It would get my vote for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anything?
What's that?
Okay. Anything further to add on that?
I just want to say that I agree with everything that's been said.
Excellent. All right. And Patrick, Donovan, anything further you need from council on this topic?
I do not, Donovan.
Nothing else for me. Thank you for the guidance. I appreciate that.
Very good. All right, next item tonight is consideration or discussion of state bonding bill options. And Patrick?
Yeah, it's as you all know, the legislature finished their budget work today, announced it. They haven't announced what size a bonding bill might be, but the bonding bill application process is going to open up or has opened up, and we have until June, I believe, somewhere in June to apply for funds. If you recall, last time the city did this, and for the first time the city did it, we applied for 3 different projects. One was North Shore Trail, one was the bridge by the roundabout, and the third was lift stations. We were awarded $1.7 million for lift stations. One of the things that I believe we learned during the whole process is that environmental projects are a very attractive project for the legislature to consider. Going to the Capitol, the mayor and I, we heard a lot of infrastructure, kind of ecology, water, clean sewers, and all that. So that's what really seemed to be the focus of the legislature committee that we would go through. So what we're recommending, if you recall, back on the 16th of February, there was a presentation regarding the Rice Creek Watershed District and the JD4 study. That study reported that it was anticipated that we should be preparing to rehab and maintain and improve the drainage ditch 4. And a lot of that had to do with creating a regional pathway with open space and open channel ditches from the wetland to wetland, and then eventually mentioning a pond or a small lake, really, more or less, regional stormwater pond. And why we talked about a regional pond is that we figured that one large pond is better than a bunch of small ponds along the way as development comes. It's more efficient. It can give the city a nice amenity with possibly park space around it when we get there, but also then the city wouldn't have to maintain a small pond after small pond after small pond. We just have to maintain one large pond for the most part. And some of that could be funded by development fees to the developers. Now that they wouldn't have to put small ponds on each of their developments, we'd have one large pond. So we've been doing a little work on that, and we believe that's a good project to ask the legislature for in a bonding bill. Tim Olson and I have been talking. We gave a presentation to the Rice Creek watershed last Monday regarding this, asking for at least their support, and they were in support of that. What it envisions is this open pathway, connecting waterways, connecting the wetlands, and then this large regional ditch. We're still working the numbers, but it's anticipated that we would need about 170 acres to do this. That would include the whole parkway with ditches and small ponding, but then a large pond. Not knowing exactly yet the cost of that, if we estimated we'd have to buy acreage at $25,000 an acre, that's a $4.25 million purchase of land that we would have to do. And the reason we're coming to it now, not only because of the bonding bill, but as development continues in Forest Lake, the land's going to disappear. We're not going to have a lot of opportunities to do this. So if we can get on that and reserve some of this land for stormwater management, we believe it'll benefit the city. In addition, we think that we have some good partners that would help support this, not only Rice Creek watershed, but some of the other watersheds and communities downstream would probably be more than happy to support this, because we'd be holding the water back when it got full and rainstorms and things. So it wouldn't be, it might relieve some of their flooding and some of the other issues they may have downstream. So what we're asking the council to consider, and we'll bring back soon a little bit more specific information on cost and things like that, is to approve that we go forward with asking the legislature for, believe close to the $4 million, $4.2 million, and start to outline a narrative for that project that we can send along when we put the bonding bill. I think that's our best hope with that right now. I don't think that if we went back with the North Shore Trail or we went back with a bridge by the roundabout that we would get funding. That was pretty apparent the last time. I think this is, like I said, a good story to tell, a good project, and a lot of different players that would support this. I think we could get support from the county. I think we could get support from the state and some of the communities downstream. So that's the quick outline. Again, we'd come back and give you a little bit more formal of an outline, but before we proceed, we want to make sure that we're on the right track here.
Thank you, Patrick. Council, kind of given what we've heard previously related to this project overall and kind of timing of what's coming up for bonding bill submissions, interested in your feedback on priority and kind of just getting a little bit further into this project. And so just other kind of questions or points of conversation that council might want staff to be considering at this point. I guess I'd be interested in, we're at the very beginning of this project, and there's good and bad on going for a big ask at the very beginning of a project. So I'd be interested in, not necessarily tonight, but Ryan, I think you and Donovan worked together on our previous applications and did a really nice job of summarizing that. And I'd be interested in your feedback on how do we best position a project where, again, we're at the very beginning with enough definition that it's an attractive project, but also being transparent that we're at the beginning, and just interested in kind of thoughts on pros and cons, just where we are in the life cycle of this consideration.
I have some ideas. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's long-term planning. And this is it's a big project. And I think with all the, you know, the kind of the supplemental benefits, I think it's now when things are kind of open, we can talk more about those in a way that's in a real promotional way, that if things are more defined, might be a little more restricted in our language. So I kind of think that's a benefit. And yet somehow, and I think this is where, you know, Ryan's team will really excel, is, you know, laying out the quantitative benefits. I mean, it's not pie in the sky, but if these, you know, stormwater management features are built, and also, you know, what the science is behind it, there's a real advantage. And so, you know, so it's not like building up like it's a pie in the sky. So I think there's, you know, to show there's a real foundation to what the benefits will be.
Mayor, City Council, just to add on that, I would say we're a lot farther than you guys probably think we are, just with all the studying that's been done here and the development applications that have been completed and the applications that are being in discussion. But reality is, if things aren't starting to be completed upstream of where all this water drains, the infrastructure just gets that much bigger downstream. And that's the cost savings that we're talking about, and environmental savings that is going to occur here. If we can keep water up in this portion of the watershed district and keep the wetlands, you know, healthy, versus all that stuff eventually directly draining downstream, which eventually drains to the Mississippi, that size of infrastructure and maintenance that's going to be required downstream is going to be not financeable. So here you have an opportunity to deal with that directly, because this is where it all starts, right? But then if you think of stuff like Arbor Ridge and Maple Grove and all the recreation around those larger ponds that have, and then business development, that you guys have already taken the steps on some of the rezoning in some of these areas to help with, you know, that mixed use land use. So there's all those things that have to be tied in and brought into this application, and how much envisioning we can put in graphics and what this could potentially look like. I think it's going to be a unique project, but that solves a lot of issues regional on an environmental side of things. But then also on an economic development side of things, we've been partnering with Washington County, which you're right in the tech corridor. So that's going to be brought into this big time. And that'll directly affect the acreage that we're talking about in the city's lot right over there, and how that can, some of these improvements would help meet those stormwater requirements. So just 1 minute of talking there, you can see how big of a regional impact we can have on this project if we go and do this now versus trying to retrofit this after the fact. So it's definitely going to be unique submittal, but I think the things that would be affected are long-term stuff that a lot of applications can't touch us in.
Councilmember Byström.
Well, make a pretty compelling case already, and it sure does seem that, you know, these types of projects are favorable. I have a question about the bridge, and maybe this is a question for Chief Peterson, perhaps. It feels as though we have fewer safety concerns in that area than we once had. Now, mind you, we haven't had school in session full force either, so maybe it's a little too early to make a judgment in that regard. But I'm just wondering, I'm wondering if there are some feelings, you know, thoughts and feelings about that area, and if we feel less inclined that may be a priority at this point than it once was. Any perspective on that?
Well, I won't speak for the police chief, but he can talk about safety, and maybe Ryan or Dave can as well. But the good thing about the improvement is the flashing lights that were allowed to be put in there, the warning lights at the crossing. I think that goes a long way for pedestrian safety, something that you don't see very many places. I can't tell you what the traffic count's in or if there's been issues, but that's where we see it right now. I think the safety is much better. And it is hard to tell with not as many people being in school these days. So.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about the bridge on 35?
We're talking about the proposed possible bridge.
Over 97.
The pedestrian facility by the high school, Goodview 97.
Yeah, that was
okay.
on our list.
Now I'm following.
Yeah.
I was already thinking of the potential future 180th interchange. So I thought we were going there.
Mayor Bain, can I weigh in? Well, I think in these situations, it's hard. You can't pit projects against projects. They're all important. But I think in this situation, you have to go with the political strategy of what the legislature likes, what they want to hear. If you can show this quantitative information of how it benefits other communities, it's more bang for their buck, and that's what they want. So I think in this situation, trust me, North Shore Trail, we need to fix it. We all know we need to fix it. But I think in this situation, you have to look at what's going to get funded and play the game.
I agree. I would agree with that, Kelly.
Chief Peterson, I don't know if you're available. Looks like you're on mute. And we can circle back on the question too around kind of just perspective of public safety on Goodview and 97. So having sat through the discussions as we presented to the committee that does the bonding bill, it's going to escape me at the moment, forgive me. But as we heard other testimony, we saw the other projects that we were kind of in competition with, anything that can combine recreation with clean water seemed to just get bumped to the top of the list. And so if you're able to, in this case, have clean water, plus again, there's some recreation amenities, but also economic development and being planful ahead of how those watershed areas are being managed. It seems to be a very attractive project. What might help as we consider what else to see as we kind of move this process along, I would like to see a list of the finalist projects from the last bonding bill. It would just helpful for council to see what were finalist projects and then what was ultimately funded in both dollar amounts as well as kind of what those project summaries were. I know that House Investment Committee materials are pretty robust, and just some summary sheets might be helpful just to kind of illustrate the type of projects that other communities are submitting.
Yeah, I think we can find that, yeah. Okay.
Well, I think the sheer scope of the potential partnership as well. I'd be curious on a little additional detail where that's concerned. We've talked about the county, we've talked about some potential, downstream benefits. I'd just be curious on what administration is thinking there.
Yep. And I think also, just outlining, just like Ryan outlined, kind of where we are in project consideration, and being as specific as we can, knowing that there's some elements of that project that are maybe not as developed, but just being as specific as we can in our ask of how those bonding bill funds would be used. The project team really liked things that they can visualize and can be specific on here's what we're going to do. Chief Peterson, the question had come up we're talking about bonding bill projects and, you know, council's consideration of what should be a priority in this next round of applications. And the question had come up on circling back on the pedestrian bridge that had been previously applied for a good view in 97, and just Councilmember Beister just had a question on if thoughts on what is perceived pedestrian safety at that intersection now, and, you know, has that been a smoother and safer intersection with the flashing beacon lights, or are we still seeing some problems there? And know that it's been COVID season and hasn't exactly been normal, but kind of just your thoughts from a public safety perspective.
Yeah, with the improvements that were made with the roundabout, it has definitely improved the safety there tenfold. There's no doubt about it. Are there moments, you know, number one, it really slows down the vehicles. So it gives you time to see, and there's good viewpoints for the drivers. You can see when somebody's coming up on a bike or walking, skateboarding, what have you. So I think it's improved substantially. Now, would a pedestrian bridge or something like that help even further? It could. I have no idea what that would look like, and if it would assist in the safety even further. That's a question that I think we just don't know. But from personal experience, talking to others, talking to officers on and off in regards to that intersection right now, it's so much more better than it was. I'm just so glad that we had that completed. So unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer for you. I can't say that, yes, you have to, you know, we need to look at the pedestrian bridge, or know that the roundabout and the crosswalks right now are working perfectly. Sorry, I didn't answer the question.
No, Chief, I'd like to, you know, as we start building back, you know, schools in full capacity with foot traffic, and I'd love to, you know, if you can just keep it on your radar, maybe to give us an update on that come fall. Sure. That would be great. I do think we need to keep that front and center on our radar. I just, you know, I think the safety of our community, and especially our kids, you know, really is paramount. And I just want to be sure that this has resolved that issue adequately, and that we don't need to keep it, you know, that we don't necessarily need to pursue that in the immediate. So
yeah, that said, even just some observation over the next couple of weeks, we're kind of in the season where, you know, kids are out and everyone's got, you know, spring fever and is ready for school to be done. And so just some observations in the next couple of weeks on just what does that look like at both early morning and during the school time. I know one of the challenges is, you know, that also happens during, you know, some substantial traffic rush. So it'd be good to just hear some feedback.
Yeah, and I've sat out there many times along with Captain Weiss just to kind of observe before school and after school. And it's definitely so much more safer out there. But I like that idea. I'll definitely reach out and, you know, talk to some of the officers, see if they have seen anything. I definitely know for a fact that the accidents in that area have decreased dramatically. And I honestly don't even recall even a minor accident in that intersection. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I haven't heard of anything. And like I've said, with the kids walking and the pedestrians, it's definitely a much safer intersection. But I'll keep an eye out on it, talk to a few of our officers and definitely school administration, and I'll get back to you within a few weeks.
Great.
Thank you. Coming back to the topic of, you know, staff's looking for kind of direction and prioritization, and before you know, additional material start getting put together towards a bonding request, just wanted some directional kind of approval that was kind of the direction council wanted to be heading with this next request. And I think it's a I support it. It's a substantial enough, it's a different project than what we were previously funded for. And it's also the type of project, remember, keep in mind that it is unusual that the first request gets funded. And so we may have to go back multiple rounds, and might be something that we, you know, it's our first look. Patrick and I heard many communities that had been, you know, not just submitted, but had presented and been in final consideration multiple years without success. So it's good to get started early.
And it sounds like it's a fairly tight turnaround too. So, you know, I fully support continuing to build that out, you know, build the plan out and be ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, submissions are due by June 18th. So
yeah.
We will get it back to council quickly, probably the first meeting in June, so we can submit before the 18th.
All right. Anything further on this topic? All right. Patrick or anybody else from staff, anything else you have for council this evening?
I do not.
As I look at my agenda and make sure I'm not missing anything else tonight. All right, council, we have next meeting, next Monday, we are doing that via Zoom, and nothing further but on our agenda this evening, and nothing further coming before us. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Motion from Councilmember Munson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Councilmember Husnick. And Karen, could we have a roll call for adjournment, please?
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Bystrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye. We're adjourned, everybody. Have a great night. It's a beautiful evening out there. Enjoy it.